A very good afternoon to you. Welcome. This is Milan San Remo, the longest single day in the saddle for the entire pro peloton, and one of the monuments, the great classics. Starting in the center of Milan, running out of that city, about 20 kilometers worth of bouncing and bobbing around until they get out on the road. Over 300 kilometers in length, the entire race. Officially, it's only 298, but once you add on the extras, it's a long, long way. This is one of the great races. And all the greats have won here, not just sprinters, but those men, strong men who can sprint as well. More sprinters in the recent past than not. The last 5 winners. Frere, Cavendish, Cancellara, Frere again, and Pozzato. Signing on this morning at 10:06 in the middle of Milan, George Hinkepi and the world champion, Mark Cavendish. The last man to have won in the rainbow jersey was Giuseppe Cerrone way back in the 1980s. 1983 it was indeed. Saw a shot of Oscar Freire, and then this was a minute's silence by the riders, just remembering the school children who tragically killed recently in the Belgian children tragically killed in the coach accident in the Swiss tunnel, and that's why they were focusing on Tom Bowden rolling out of the city. You see what I mean? Lots of flagstones and rattling and bumping around. 'Twas ever thus. Welcome to our live coverage here on Eurosport of Milan San Remo. As I say, Mark Cavendish hoping to become the man who wins in the rainbow jersey. The first one since Cerrone. This is the route today, running down towards the coast, over the Ticino, onto the coast itself, and all the way down it follows to San Remo. The two big tests, the Cipressa there and the Poggio right towards the end. 298 official kilometers, but it is a little longer than that when you add the Milan section in as well. They go through the Passo di Ticino, and there are 9 men in a breakaway today. They had a maximum of 14 minutes. They went away very early. By 30 kilometers, they'd built up a lead of 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Then it went up to 14. With 150 to go, they were reeled back to 7. Today, it'll be the weather that plays a factor. It is very, very strong winds indeed off the coast of San Remo. And running in towards the finish, it alternates between a full-on tailwind and a side tailwind. So going up and down the Poggio will be pretty interesting indeed. There's also a lot of spray being blown off the sea. You can see the wind on those palm trees at the back. It's not quite as dramatic to see as it really is out there. A lot of spray being thrown up as well. Possibly, if the weather turns a bit nasty, and it is possible that by the time they get to the Poggio, there may be some light drizzle have blown in. It's going to be a very interesting finish indeed. Whatever happens, dry or wet, the weather, the wind in particular, is going to play quite a role. At the moment, gusting very strongly from the east. The men in the breakaway have a lead of under 7 minutes now, but they went away fairly early. They are 36 Dmitry Gudstev of Astana. Started off as a stagiaire with Astana a couple of seasons ago. He's, I think he was second in the Asian time trial champions. Good time trialist. As we look down on the peloton, Suarez, Juan Pablo Suarez of the Colombia Col Deportes team, number 58. Pagani, Angelo Pagani of the Colnago squad, going well this season so far. Juan Jose Aros of the Euskaltel team, Paolo De Negri of Farnese Vini, Cheng Ji of the Project 1 T4I squad, the Chinese rider. He's ridden before. Rode Liège, Bastogne-Liège back in 2009, so he's ridden a monument before as Ji. Michael Morkov of Team Saxo Bank, 216. Oleg Berdoz of the Utensil Nordnamed team, registered in Ireland, all full of, pretty much all full of Italian riders. And Team Type 1's Vegard Langen of Norway. Those are the riders in the breakaway. At the moment, the weather looks fairly benign, but just keep an eye on that right-hand side of your screen. Look at the way the wind is whipping around that palm tree. And today's race is the longest in the entire single-day calendar. Started off in 1907. Won by Lucien Petit-Breton. Actually, he was born in Italy, so they sort of claim him as their own. And it started off as a car race. Did the Milan San Remo. It was so knackering on cars of that era, they were all breaking down, that they turned it into a bicycle race. And Petit-Breton was the first man to win. He'd actually won Paris Tour fairly recently before that, riding for Bianchi. This is the scene at San Remo at the moment. Beside me, a man who's probably had one of the most famous victories of his career and of all time on this particular race, Milan San Remo, Sean Kelly. And we to go back into the early 1990s for that, when he beat Moreno Argentine whilst riding for the Festina squad. Sean, today it's the distance really for those riders who aren't particularly experienced, and the pace it might go at, but the weather looks like it's going to play a big part today.
Well, yes, the weather will play a big part if it turns in the wrong way. If we get rain, of course, the final of this one, the last 50 kilometres are, you know, the very important part of the race. That's where it will all happen. And with the Poggio Suppressa, then the Capos just before that, it's going to make it much more nerve-wracking for everybody if we're going to the wet conditions. But it changes so much here as well. You know, an hour before the riders come along into the final 50 kilometres, we could see the roads being a little bit wet, but they dry up very quickly. But it could go vice versa also, and that would be very nervous times. From experience, I know Milan San Remo, it's one of the greatest races to win, but not the nicest race to ride, because when you get along the coast road here, there's so much pushing and shoving, and you have a big group of riders. You know, you still have 180 riders when you get in that final 50-60 kilometres, and if it's wet conditions, it's so much more dangerous again, and you're always nervous at that, because you know the crashes occur so much more easily in the wet conditions. And I think riders and director sports will be hoping that they get a dry final 50 kilometres today. Yeah,
I think so. Peter Zagen, you see up towards the front there. Sorry about the picture breakup today. I think the wind is playing all sorts of havoc with pictures today. We're liable to get this breakup. Aqua Sapone in the white with the red helmets towards the front. Just trying to keep De Luca and Corioni out of trouble. Also Farnese Vini in the fluorescent yellow with black shorts. They are here as well. It's a twisting and turning route alongside the coastline. Back with our men here. Number 86 on your screens is Paolo De Negri. 100 kilometres to go, Sean. We've joined it at just about the right time, really, because the peloton will still be rolling along, but they'll be trying to get teams up towards the front to bring them back a little bit. It's not often this race is won from a breakaway or with a solo ride. In recent years, it's become more sprinter-orientated.
Yes, and with the group we have out front, you know, it's a nice lead at the moment. I think it's around 6 or 7 minutes we're hearing at this time. So that's probably in some of the teams as well. We have to keep it rolling here, because this breakaway has a nice advantage at the moment. And yeah, you never know how the riders out front are going to, you know, continue on riding. If there's a few of them, you know, in good condition, they can go on for a long time. But when you get to that 100 kilometre mark, then it starts to, you know, the pace starts up a bit. There's a lot of positioning going on, as we have just seen. And from here on, and we know last year as well, you know, it's around 100 kilometres, maybe a bit earlier, there was a point where there was a crash on a little descent, and I think riders will be thinking of that, the teams will be thinking of that, and they'll be saying, you know, be careful. And again, again, we can see here at the finish, but also out on the road there is a little bit of cloud hanging about, and I think a lot of the riders and the Director Sport East more so warn the riders, look, remember last year you get a little bit of a shower, you have to keep up to the front, guys, because if we have a little descent and a crash, then it could, upset the whole tactic of a team. And last year that was the case. There was 40 riders in the front, and they went on to the finish. There was a big chase for, it went on for an hour before the last league really broke, and then the peloton wasn't there to close it down, and then 40 men went on to contest the victory of the Milan San Remo.
Yeah, it did. Last year, of course, remember Matt Goss taking the win. And Goss terrifically fast in the end, but the ride of the day really was Scarponi, bridging across the gap, just missing out really. Getting over by himself. Is immensely strong, Sean, on that.
Yes, it was an amazing ride that he came across on his own in the very late stages, and he went off on the suppressor and managed to get across on the Poggio. And if he had been up there in that 40-man group, then he would have been a danger man. Last year, of course, he wasn't real good shape. Torino at the Ratico, he was really flying, and he just missed out. And I suppose the interesting one as well, Goss from HTC last year, he was the only one from his team up front, but still managed to win it. And that is Milan San Remo. We've talked about it during the Paris-Nice. We've had discussions about it, and like a Freire as well, he's a rider who can follow. You don't have to have a lot of help around you. It does for the morale when you have a teammate or two around you, but you don't actually need him. You can just follow this race and play the waiting game, and it's all about following on the Suppresso and more on the Poggio. If you can get up the Poggio with the strong men, then as we see last year, about a 10-man group going away, and Freire's the one who can do it, and Goss is a perfect example last year. The question this year of the sprinters, who can make it over the Poggio?
Goss not really been showing the sort of form that he did last year, without a shadow of a doubt. I think there's a couple of riders in here. We'll discuss them as we go. We've got plenty of time to discuss them. But there's a couple of riders who've been not sandbagging, but haven't really shown yet so far. Green Edge driving it along at the moment. Matt Goss, of course, riding for Green Edge this year. There's no Irishman in the race this year, so Sean has commandeered Stuart O'Grady as the token Irishman, or half Irishman, riding for the Australian Green Edge team.
Well, if he wins, we'll definitely claim him.
Well, absolutely, yeah. There's Mark Cavendish. Look, just a little elbow on the backside of Bernard Eisel so he can get into... So he says, well, I'm here. Just be aware I'm going to get tucked in behind you. Cavendish wanting to wear those rainbow bands across the line. Giuseppe Cerrone did so in 1983. Other riders who've done it, Merckx, Alfredo Binder, back in the early years of the century, last century, should we say. Good crowds turning out already, and they've still got 95 kilometers to go here in Milan San Remo. 9 men in the break, and there is about 97.5 kilometers to go. Under 97 kilometers to go now, well inside the 100. And there are 9 men in the breakaway. Gudsdev from Astana, Roz from Euskaltel, Pagani of Colnago, Suarez, the Colombian rider from the Colombia team, Cheng Ji of Project One, Oleg Berdos of the Utensil Nordname team, one of the small Italian-based teams, registered in Ireland, but Italian-based. Would you, probably Sean would claim one of them if they won as well. Michael Morkov from Team Saxo Bank is the other rider in the breakaway. This is where we had a crash last year, which really split the peloton up, and they never really got it back together again. You just have a look at this. So many of the big favourites are up to the front here. They're very nervous, Sean.
Yes, you can see just before the climb here, for a number of kilometres, everybody trying to get position in the front, and you can see the way the bunch is pulled out here. The length of the bunch is 150 metres certainly long. When you get back to the cars here, and that's not where you have to be in the back end if there's a problem. So anybody with intentions of doing something in the final here, they're staying up the front and out of danger. Get this one over with, but I think after that it will steady down quite a lot again. We see there the gap has come down drastically, 4:15 for our leaders, but I think that will probably grow out again. When they get over this section, it will probably settle again, and I think that we could see the breakaway pulling out a bit of a more advantage, because it's certainly under control at the moment.
Agnoli and Nibali, two riders from Liquigas, just pulling the pace on, maybe a little faster than required. Looking over his shoulder, Nibali. The rest of them have all got it back together. They just had to come through an archway into this citadel town. It's still up and down. This is the area where we had a bit of a tumble last year. The weather dry, although the forecast is we might get a little bit of a drizzle hanging over the Poggio and Cipressa when we get there. Google on the far right-hand side for Vacances Soleil. Nibali in the middle with Agnoli pulling them along. Klaas Boom of Rabobank, the big figure just behind Nibali. There he is on the right-hand side of your screen. Peter Sagan is right up there. Tom Bonen is not too far back. The rainbow bands of Mark Cavendish have been protected by Bernard Eisel and Matt Heyman at the moment, but they've dropped a little bit off the front here. Just hiding. Fabian Cancellara looking very cool there, Sean, just sitting in the saddle, twiddling his way up here. A lot of the riders out of the saddle. We'll talk about the favourites in just a minute, but he looks fairly calm and collected there, but so many of the big names at the front here.
Yes, and Buenos Cancellara not calm and looking comfortable.
Indeed.
It's amazing the way he can just sit there and you know, on quite difficult climbs, but at this stage of the race with, you know, over 90 kilometres to go, all the big favourites that are in shape, that are thinking of doing something in the final of this one, you have to be comfortable here. If you're not comfortable, well, then you start to ask yourself, well, what's happened today? I'm not feeling good, and you start to be concerned a bit. So the big favourites would be, you know, really quite comfortable here, and also quite relaxed. They can ride in the front. That's the Classics men. They can do that with, you know, with so much ease. Stay in the top 20, 30 riders. Where there's some other riders, you know, who have difficulty doing that, and you know, you have to make an effort. Quite a bit more effort to stay in the front. You know, and there's some names here as well that will say, well, I'll take the risk here. Last year, you know, we had the crash here. Everybody's going to be nervous, and there's going to be, you know, big control up front, and there's nothing going to happen. And you know, a rider like Philippe Gilbert might say to himself, well, you know, just take it easy here. Don't get concerned. Don't try and ride up front too much, and spare everything for the final. And if you're not in great shape, like Gilbert, there's a little bit of a question mark over his form at the moment. Is he good enough to be really up in the final today?
Before we look at the runners and riders, really, let's just have a think about this as a race itself. It's the first monument of the season, the first of the big classic races, Milan San Remo. It's the longest single-day race on the calendar. Sean, what does it mean to a rider to win this race?
Well, if you can win the Milan San Remo, if you're an Italian, you can go to the beach for the next 6 months and you never have to do anything for the rest of the season. If you're an outsider or not an Italian, your season is good. Everything else can be a bonus. So you know, it's a monument of classics. This is the big one, the first big one of the classics of the beginning of season. And if you can win this one, well then, you know, your form is good. It has to be good to win it. No matter how experienced you are, if you're not in good form, it's very difficult to win this one because of the distance, 300 kilometres, and it's the speed in the end. It's not the real difficulty of the Cipressa and the Poggio, because the grade is not that great, but you know, they go up there at 50k an hour, and that is the difficult one if you're not in your best shape. And if you can win this one, well then, you know, you're just so much relaxed going into the other ones, and then you can do great performances. But you know, it's really 15, 20 years ago, some of the riders that won, well then they went just holidays for the rest of the year.
Fair enough, if you can get away with that. It's not always a sprinter's classic either, although there is a large percentage of the riders, as we see Mark Cavendish with Jeremy Hunt just behind him, who win this classic. But if you go back a little further, let's have a look. 99, André Schmil. Fondriest, fairly good kick from a small bunch, but not a sprinter by a long way. Claudio Chiappucci, you could never call him a sprinter. Bugno, great all-round rider, of course. Laurent Fignon won this race twice. Again, could go well. He had a good turn of speed on him, but not a pure out-and-out sprinter. It just depends on whether you can get up over that last 2 hills, especially the last one, the Poggio, Sean, and how you feel.
Yes, well, you know, you have to be... You have to be in a good position going into the Poggio, stay up there in that top 20 riders, and you know, make your calculation. Then it depends on what the other teams are going to do as well, and there's a lot of talk about that. You know, it's in the Sky team. Bosenhagen, he is talking about everything for Mark Cavendish. He's going to, you know, try and ride for Cavendish. Is that true? Because there are also a lot of bluff, and you know, the tactics you read, you never can believe. As you can see here, there's some riders starting to get into difficulty, but
including Mark Cavendish.
Yes, and it's all about, you know, getting up the Poggio. That's what the sprinters, you know, they're just thinking, if I can get over the Poggio. When you talk about Mark Cavendish, his form is pretty good. Is it good enough? It's going to be a difficult one, I feel, for him. Where if you look at the likes of Cancellara, he's really in top form. He put on an exhibition, the Strada Bianca, and so. But again, you know, we're just that week later, and sometimes riders can, you know, improve a lot in a number of days.
Look at this, Mark Cavendish tailed off on that little climb that they've just been through. The Mani. And having some problems staying with the group. Ferraro just behind him, the Colombian, out climbing him here, and he's being just a little bit tailed off by the three men who are looking over their shoulder, including Matt Heyman looking after him. He doesn't look to be particularly comfortable. She's labouring over that gear a bit.
Yes, not comfortable at all, because you know, with the teammates he had around him there, he should be able to stay in the wheel pretty comfortable. We can see the team cars are starting to go by. Cavendish, you know, not in good shape, going through a difficult patch, and sometimes you can get that in a race like this. You know, 300 kilometres with just under 100 kilometres to go. You can be in difficulty on this climb, but then you can, you know, pull it back and feel better in the end. But the way he's losing time here, losing distance, it's not going to be easy to get back into the main peloton. And if the word gets around, which will get pretty quick, yeah. Then they will keep the pace high on the front, not to allow Cavendish, because they know if they come to the finish in San Remo with him, he's just so difficult to beat in a sprint.
Absolutely. It's Jeremy Hunt who's gone back and just looked over his shoulder, kept him going. Hunt saying recently, you know, I really would like to retire, but you don't get the opportunity to serve a world champion very often. And there he is, 2:05. And he's just really labouring Mark Cavendish over this gear. Looks like he's the sort of day you'd see him on the Tour de France in a mountain. Well, that is interesting. Very, very difficult to see that he's got the form to come back at this. But as Sean says, you never know. You might just start feeling a little better. We've still got 90 kilometres to go, but that's not a good sign, to be fair. Right, let us look at the runners and riders. We can already see Cavendish is in a little bit of difficulty. He's wearing the rainbow bands. He would like to, of course, win Milan San Remo for a second time and do so as world champion. But there's a whole fist of other riders out here, Sean, in very good form, who could well spring a surprise today.
Yes, well, there's a lot of riders in good form, and you know, we've seen in the Torino Adriatico, Paris-Nice, of course, you know, we had some there as well. You know, the Liquigas team, I think they have a very good lineup with Nibali, you know, winning the Torino Adriatico. He's going to be a danger man in the final. He's definitely going to attack on the Poggio if he's there. He's not going to wait for a sprint, because he knows, you know, if he comes to a sprint with Cancellara, somebody like that, or Philippe Gilbert, or the better sprinters, well, then he has no chance. But you know, those two are really in good shape at the moment. And Cancellara himself, he's another rider who can get up the Poggio. Tom Bonen, is he good enough? I was surprised in the Paris-Nice, the way he was riding, that he wasn't contesting more the final, where we had hills like we have in the end of the Milan San Remo. But you know, he's done it before, he's got the experience. We'll have to wait and see, but you know, there's a lot of riders in here capable of winning the Milan San Remo. If you look back last year, I suppose, you know, we had 10 riders getting over the Poggio. So you know, something like that again today is possible. If there's a team who really push it on, we could see that group of 10 or 15s getting over the Poggio and coming together for the final sprint.
30 seconds for Mark Cavendish to make up with Jeremy Hunt pacing him along, and they're pushing the pace on a little bit at the front. It's Daniel Oss in the centre, the very tall Italian rider, with on the left-hand side Agnoli now upping the pace once again. Hugeland responds on the right-hand side. And it's interesting to see who is in this group pulling it along. See Jelle van den Det up towards the front as well. And look at this. This is, I tell you what, we've already had a couple of comments on Twitter. The account is @spokesmen, SPOKESMEN. Chris Prosser saying, oh, Cav's bluffing for sure. I would lay a large sum of money on the fact that he is not bluffing. That is not looking good, Sean.
No, not at all good. As I said a bit earlier, when we see him just appearing on the end of the peloton, he had a number of teammates around him, and you know, maybe they were calculating not to just go that bit too fast on the climb. Just keep a tempo and you know, stay on the rear end of the bunch. Keep the peloton in sight at 100, 200 metres, but it's not good at all. He's not going to make it back into the peloton at this moment because he's just losing too much. And we can see on the front of the bunch they're still going uphill. They have to do the downhill now, and you know, they will keep it going because of Cavendish losing contact with the bunch. They're definitely going to push it on, and I can see him no way back into the bunch for him.
This is the thing. If you can keep them within 100 metres, 200 metres, then you can get back on the descent. But you saw the way that Liquigas and other teams who are coming up to the front to push it on. They can see the world champion has been tailed off. He's got the ever-faithful lieutenant, Bernie Eisler, with him, but it's not going to be enough. I tell you what, if he's bluffing, it's the most spectacular bluff I've ever seen. This is the front of the peloton. It's beginning to split up already, Sean, and we're lingering with Cavendish. The pictures seem to be getting a little better than they were, but look, this is a real push on now. They are not content to let it go. They know that the world champion's in trouble, a chance to kill him off and get going. Yes,
and you know, the race was going a long time before we got to this climb, and they're going to continue on for quite a while here. And with Mark Cavendish losing contact, there are some of the teams going to continue on a bit more, and you know, the bluffing part of it, you know, you can bluff a bit on the rear end of the bunch, hang around 150, 200 metres off, get back quickly on the descent with 3 or 4 or 5 teammates. You can afford to do that. But we, you know, you cannot risk taking a big bluff here, because in the end of this race, every little bit counts, and it's certainly not bluffing from Cavendish at the moment.
No, I don't think so either. I think he's in real trouble. He's got Eisler with him, and Eisler was just turning the pedals around. Now they're trying to get back. Even if he does get back, Sean, I mean, he's going to have a spectacular upturn in feeling good by the time they get to the next hill, because it'll be the same again.
Yes, although they have they have quite a bit now where it's not too difficult terrain, but to get back here, you know, it's we haven't got any time check recently, but it's surely what, 30, 40 seconds?
40 seconds, yeah. Look, he looks in really bad shape.
And that is big, you know, for one rider with him as well. If you have 5 riders who can do a good pull on the front, keep riding together, and depending on what way they ride up front as well, if they slow down a bit after this and relax, well, then you could get back in, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen for Cavendish on this occasion.
Well, we shall see. Look at the way they're pushing on the left-hand side of the screen, the split screen we've got here. It's Liquigas are determined to push on. Let's have a look at the other riders then. Let's go through the teams while we're waiting for Cavendish to see if he can get back on. There's a couple of riders just ahead. Matt Goss, not sure about his form. We really simply aren't sure about his form, but the winner last year might well do something. Corioni and De Luca of Acqua Sapone. De Luca's been up towards the front. Again, he had that sort of face on that says this is hurting. What about AG2R here, Sean? Manuel Belletti, would you go for, or a rider who possibly who's having a goodish season so far and a bit of punch, especially into the wind, like Ronaldo Nocentini? Yes, well, Nocentini in the Torino Adriatico, he was you know, pretty much involved in the racing in the final, getting up there on the sprints and finishing up in the top 10 in some of them uphill sprints, and that's a good indicator that he's pretty in good shape. And of course, you know, for an Italian as well, there's, you know, always the morale is that bit higher, and they really, you know, put in bigger performances here than some of the other classics. So he is the one I think we could see in the end. BMC, of course, they have the team, which is, you know, a real strong one. Van Avermaet will be interesting to see what the role will be with Philippe Gilbert, because Van Avermaet in his own right, he is, you know, a real classic rider and becoming you know, a better one in the last year, really upped his game in the end of last year. It'll be interesting to see, will they control it. 1:39 gets it over. As far I'm going to stick my neck out and say that's over for Cav. 1:30. He's going to have to fly like the wind to get back in there, and when he does, Eisel is going to be completely cream-crackered. Everybody else will have to do the work, and everybody will sit on Bernard Eisel then and see if they can get back. If Cavendish gets back, I've got to say, he doesn't look as though he's feeling particularly good. I agree with you, Sean, about Greg van Avermaet, by the way. He's one of my outsiders. Today, outsiders for me, Greg van Avermaet is one to look at. Oscar Gatto, look at Oscar Gatto if he manages to get up there. I tell you who's going well is Daniele Bernati. He'll help Cancellara, as will Tony Galopin. My money's on a different type of sprint this year. And the people I'm sticking my neck out for who will be up there towards the end, Cancellara, Van Avermaet, possibly Matti Breschel if he's got a little bit in the legs, and Oscar Freire. I've got a sneaky suspicion about Oscar Freire riding for Katusha now, of course. So don't look for the Rabobank colours, look for the red of Katusha. What do you think, Sean? Am I way off beam there?
No, again, Oscar Freire, we see him in the Torino Adriatico. He was getting up there in the sprints, and we know that in the big bun sprints against the better sprinters, he's not as fast as he was 3-4 years ago, but still finishing up there, you know, in the top 3 places in the Torino Adriatico. It's a good indicator that he is in good shape, and we all know with Freire, once he starts showing a bit of form, he's a danger one, and he's also, you know, very, very experienced in this race. You know, he can follow. You never see him. He's always there in that 25th, 30th position. Follow, you know, all day. The Suppressa a little bit more to the front, maybe in the top 20, and on the Poggio a little bit closer again. But you know, for experience, he is a real crafty one. And if he's there on the Poggio, you know, he is that bit better on the climbs than like a Bonin, for example. The other sprinters, he is that little bit stronger.
There's a couple of, more than a couple of riders just ahead. Bernard Eisel's been doing a fine job just towing that group along. It'll be a bigger group trying to make contact again. They may eventually get within some striking distance, but I just don't think that Cavendish looks good at the moment. It's going to be a big ask for him to get something back in his legs. You can turn things around. You can start feeling better as time goes on. But Mark, at the moment, not looking as though he's having an awful lot of fun, one has to say. I think he's got, might be Tom, it's either Tom Fielers or Roy Curvers just behind him. So another good, fast road man. This is our breakaway. To remind you who's in it, Dimitri Grudstev is the Astana rider you can see. Suarez from the Columbia team. Pagani was pushing on earlier from the Colnago squad. Ross from Euskaltel, De Negri of Farnese Vini, G of Project 140 T4I, Michael Morkov of Saxabank, just at the back there. Berdos, Oleg Berdos of Utensil Nord, and Langen of Team Type 1, the Norwegian rider. There is Michael Morkov, getting a bit of a specialist in breakaways. 85 kilometers to go for our 9 breakaway men. They're still all riding together. This is where the wind will start playing a big part. Now they're down onto the coast. Shaking their arms out a little bit. There's not the nicest of surfaces to descend on through those tiny roads, Sean, is it? It's all cracked up and broken and very narrow.
Yes, it's not a nice descent at all, and you can see the reason why the bunch was so nervous coming to this section. You know, if it's a little bit damp, wet on the corners, well, then it's very, very a treacherous descent. And everybody is remembered last year, of course, and we could see our breakaway. They have turned onto the coast again, and that is the point where I feel the bunch might slow down. With Cavendish off the rear now, that is maybe going to change the situation, change the tactic of some of the teams, and possibly we'll see it continuing on. And if we do keep, if they do keep it going, the pace quite high, it will make the race very difficult, because it's still a long ways, over 80 kilometres to the finish, and that is going to maybe play into the hands of the strong stronger riders on the Cipressa and the Poggio. Some will like it that way. The more they race, the more aggressive the race is, the more they will like it, because then the sprinters will be more tired. The sprinters that we've got left in the bunch, because Cavendish, it'll be interesting to see when we get onto this flat section on the coast, will he be in any position to get back into the main bunch here.
The side tailwind that's coming, is that going to help him or hinder him, Sean?
Well, I think hinder him, because the bunch up front, you know, they're going to keep it going at a very fast rate. Cavendish, he has joined up with quite a number of riders on the descent, as we see, and the interesting thing is, will there be a lot of them riders who want to continue pushing and try and get back in, and that is his chance. If there are, you know, some teams there who want to make it back into the main bunch, well, then he has some chance. But if it's only Eisel who's going to do the riding, then it's not going to be possible.
Indeed. Other riders who seem to be quite happy at the front at the moment, and another guy who got down as a potential winner today is not that pure out-and-out sprinter, but he's certainly very, very fast. And judging from the way he was riding Tirreno Adriatico, Sean, what about Peter Sagan for today?
Well, Sagan is in real shape. Like, he was on fire in the Tirreno Adriatico. We see the way
he was too much, in fact.
Yes, and the interesting one again is, you know, the big distance. Will he be able to manage that at the end? And I think he's getting that little bit, you know, stronger, because he's a very young rider, and he's only, you know, really sprang onto the scene in the last 2 years. So today could be the day we could see Sagan getting over. And I think Sagan is a rider as well. The more difficult the race is, well, then the other sprinters are going to have to, you know, really dig deep to stay in there, and they're going to pay for that in the end. And that could be where Sagan, we could see him getting into a group of 10, 15 riders in the end on the Poggio. And of course, you know, when he gets into that situation, he's very fast out of a small group. Just
to make a difficult question for you, Sean, Peter Sagan as a young rider reminds me a little bit physically and in his abilities of yourself as a rider. Would you say that was a fair assessment?
Well, do you mean he started off very fat in his first year as professional?
No, that's not what I meant. I meant he could easily. I mean, he's
well, that's what I mean.
Same sort of races. Yeah, well, I'm not even commenting about you.
No, yes, it does. There is a bit of resemblance there, because when I started off as well, you know, I was probably a number of kilos overweight. And Sagan, when he did come onto the scene, he had that couple of kilos extra. He has been trimming down and getting, you know, more competitive in the longer distance, as we mentioned, the Milan San Remo, which is, you know, close to 300 kilometres. So I think, yes, you could compare him. And of course, he is, you know, a sprinter, not a pure sprinter, but a very strong one uphill sprints, and that was my forte point as well. Against the real fast men, I was always having difficulty with the sprints, but when it was more difficult terrain, that's where I was able to, you know, get over the difficult sections, get rid of the sprinters, and then win the race from there.
The superstar rider in the peloton who's a similar type, of course, is Philippe Gilbert, and we just simply don't know what his form's like at the moment. All sorts of rumour flying around about him saying, I'm just really bad, I'm not good. Let's first of all say it would be very difficult indeed to be as good as you were last year, because he'd had the most stellar season last year you could possibly imagine. But doesn't look particularly good so far, Sean.
No, he hasn't been shown like last year. You know, at this moment he had a race under his belt already, and in the Tirreno he just didn't seem to be going as well as he would like to be, and as well as I would like him to be for a Milan San Remo. So I can feel, you know, he's going to have difficulty, and if he does hang in, you know, then you can pay for that in the end. You're not going to be as strong in the final kilometre, and we all know with Philippe Gilbert, when he gets into a race like this one, the final kilometre, he's very dangerous, but he's going to try and attack and goes alone inside the last kilometre, and difficult to see him. I would be doubtful if he will be you know, at that level today.
80 kilometres to go. Our riders are being dragged back in, 7 of them only now. They've got about 2:30 of a gap. The peloton's absolutely flying. Cavendish in trouble.